We would like to welcome you to another episode of Popcorn, Piss, and Vinegar. My name's Chris, joined by Scott and John.
Hey.
Hey.
Good Lord.
Wow. You're awake over there?
Well, I'm getting in character for the horror episode.
All right.
Since it is the month of October, we are going to celebrate the month of Halloween, except the day of Halloween, and kick it off by talking about some of our favorite horror movies.
This is my favorite genre, I think. My favorite holiday, my favorite everything.
I actually love horror movies. However, I feel like for every 15 that are released, maybe there's one worth seeing.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. With everything, though.
Exactly. So I'm going to hijack this podcast for 20 seconds.
You made a list?
I totally made a list. I'm going high fidelity here, and I'm gonna share with you guys my favorites, and then we'll use it as a kind of starting point.
Taking over the show, Big
right.
John.
That's right. Because I just don't want you to spoil anything, Chris. It's okay.
Well played.
Number one is The Exorcist.
This is your favorite.
Yeah.
Number one is The Exorcist.
In fact, I would argue this is the best horror of all time. But number one is The Exorcist. Number two is a tie between Poltergeist and The Sixth Sense. Number three, American Werewolf in London. Number four, Just the Roaches installment of Creepshow, which is unique to us since we live in New Orleans and roaches are everywhere. And number five, Frank Darabont's The Mist. Honorable mention goes to Salem's Lot, just the scene where the kid opens the window and lets the vampire drink his blood. That's it. It's actually irrefutable. It's pretty much axiomatic.
So we have two movies on your list that make the cut just because of two particular scenes.
That is correct.
That's awesome.
That's all it takes to scare the hell out of you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Right? But what in The Sixth Sense was so scary to you?
There were a couple. There were a couple of moments in it, but what impressed me about The Sixth Sense is I had a sense of fear and doom, over the age of 20. That just floored me. The scene where he goes into the house of the kid that was poisoned by her mother, and
great scene.
Yeah,
great scene.
It terrified the hell out of me.
The people who had committed suicide in the school. Great scene.
Right.
Yeah. Excellent scene.
Right. The kid with a gaping hole in his head going, "Psst, follow me."
Yeah. That is pretty creepy. I would go there.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
So modern day Hitchcockian, if that's a
absolutely.
word.
And Hitchcock deserves all the props because he laid the groundwork.
The grandfather.
The what cinematically works as a horror trope was his baby. He deserves all the props all around. Even the
so original Psycho doesn't make your cut.
Nice pun, whether or not you intended it, but no, it doesn't. It just doesn't resonate with me the way the more contemporary stuff does.
Yeah.
I'm sort of a space age whiz kid that way.
So are you? I'll send this out to both of y'all because I have an opinion on this. Gore, does gore and blood make for a horror movie?
I think for a certain type of horror movie, yes.
But does it make it scarier?
It scared me when Johnny Depp got drowned in a fountain of blood in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. That freaked my ass out.
Yeah. But nowadays, it feels like if it's not one of the scarier movies for me, and I'll step in it, is the Blair Witch Project. That was really creepy for me because I didn't see anything on screen, so my mind had to invent all the horror, and my mind inside, my mind is crazy. Don't ever get inside because it's spooky in there. So it invented all of these things that could be, and to me that was way more scarier than seeing somebody get their arm cut off.
Agreed. And the Blair Witch Project, the darling of viral marketing in films, and also the darling of found footage movies.
Patient Zero, really, yeah.
I tell you, the Blair Witch Project, I remember seeing it, and it kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time because I was wondering what the hell is going to happen next, what's going to jump out at me,
and
that's
did.
what really made it awesome.
Right.
Nothing did. Well, it's just the moments of the film just keep you on the edge of your seat. Excellent movie.
I will say in defense of copious gore, and this actually probably should be in my top 5, it should probably bump Creepshow. But The Shining, and probably part of the reason The Shining freaked me out is because I had parents that were like drinkers, so I was afraid my dad would wake up and bust through my door with an axe. But
that's real life scary.
Yeah, but when the scene in where the twins are saying we're going to be with you forever and ever, and the blood is like pouring out of the wall, that was
blood,
freaky, dude.
That's freaky, but I don't consider that gore. Gore for me is the monster comes in and rips your intestines out and throws them on the wall. Like that is gore.
My favorite gore movie of all time, and I can't really consider it a horror movie, but it is, pornographic gore. The Toxic Avenger by Troma.
Oh, that's such a great movie.
Pornographic
movie,
gore.
though.
I can't really call it a horror movie, but man, it is awesome.
I mean, I guess people dress up as the Toxic Avenger for Halloween, so you could argue it, but I mean that was total satire.
Great movie.
Agreed.
Excellent movie.
Like but going back to the original Saw, like you don't ever see him cutting. You don't ever see the cutting off of a foot or anything like that. It's implied that that's happening, but you never see it. And to me, that is more scarier than actually seeing
exactly
what someone is telling me it should look
like.
A
scene that is a perfect example of that and still makes me cringe every time I watch it. Braveheart. When they're torturing William Wallace at the end of the movie. They don't show a bit of gore, and they pantomime what's going to happen to him, which is essentially pulling out his intestines with a hook.
Right.
They don't show the only blood you see is his hand fall with his dead wife's blood on the handkerchief she made. That's the only blood in the scene.
That's more of an impact than anything else. I saw The Human Centipede. Remember that crazy movie?
Ugh.
And
I have never seen The Human Centipede.
Film. It was a terrible film.
I don't. I liked it, but I liked it in the sense that it was you didn't see again. Your mind had to.
You didn't see their mouths sewn into someone else's butthole.
You do see it, but you don't.
That's so nasty.
You know,
so
they don't.
great.
They don't show you everything.
You don't.
It's all
see
implied.
the pus coming from like. It was a totally graphic movie.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, horror movies that have an impact for me, there's two that come to mind in particular. The first one being Poltergeist. Poltergeist was a movie that resonated with me because it was perfect timing. The movie takes place in the suburbs. And my parents had just moved to the suburbs. They had just built a brand new house in a developing area. And it just resonated with me on every level. I mean, you look back at it now, a lot of the gore in that movie, like with the guy ripping his face apart and all that stuff, it's extremely dated now.
Yeah.
But that goddamn clown,
The clown is timeless, but that face peeling off scene was genius. That was genius. And what's funny is that movie haunted me because for about 5 years after, like, between senior year and college, I experimented with psychotropic drugs.
Well, of course, you drop some acid and there it is.
When you look in the mirror, you can't help but think of that scene. You retreat from the mirror in terror.
That's the maggot meat scene, right?
Yeah, the maggot meat scene.
I usually fast forward that scene. I don't like it.
The clown and the other part of Poltergeist also was when the tree attacks the young boy and tries to swallow him.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like I said, it hit on every level for me because when that movie came out, I mean, I never saw it in the theaters because my parents, I mean, they were pretty cool. They let you watch stuff, but stuff like that, my mom and dad knew if I let my kids watch this movie, I'm going to have to deal with their bullshit of, Mommy, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why they didn't want to. They didn't want me to watch that stuff. But naturally, I saw it on HBO when they weren't home.
So did I.
Scared the crap out of me, and it was perfect timing. I was around 9 years old when that movie hit HBO. You're looking at a horror movie that takes place in the suburbs. The children's toys attack them. You know, Star Wars was wildly popular at that time. You know, the kid has the Star Wars toys and the clown being possessed by the spirits and pulling him under the bed. I mean, it takes every old cliche and turns it on volume 11. I mean, it's awesome movie. I mean, spectacular. Another one that resonates with me is my mother is an aficionado of black and white films. She watches them to this day, can quote black and white movies like I can quote dork blockbuster movies. And Psycho, the original not the shitty Gus Van Sant remake.
Hey.
You can't argue it. I mean, it's a classic.
Talking about, I mean, the movie in itself is great, but the scene that's still where to this day that makes my heart jump in my throat is the upshot when the detective is coming out of the stairs and Bates just lumbers out of his room, knife in hand, and just stabs him. The way that scene is shot with the camera up on the ceiling is shot down, and with the music mix,
right?
It is still a very effective scene to this day.
Have either of you guys seen VHS?
No, it's tempting me. It's tempting me.
I honestly believe that, like, in 50 or 60 years, when there's other dudes sitting around a set of microphones talking to people about horror movies, that those dudes who are like 12, 13, 14 now are going to be talking about that as like ground zero of amazing horror, because it really caters to the way they look at the world, like social media and all that. Even though it's VHS, which is like our era age, that's the first technology that was really prevalent in terms of how he watched stuff again and changed how everything got popular. But these guys, I mean, that movie goes over like Snapchat and
How is it?
I mean, I'd say out of 10 stars, I give it about a solid 7.5. But it's
Did you
definitely
see the
worth
sequel?
watching. Huh?
There's a sequel.
I know I haven't seen the sequel yet, but like it's the medium and the way you convey horror is totally changing, and that movie is totally worth checking out because they do a pretty good job of rehashing a lot of horror tropes that we grew up with in a new way. So I would highly recommend
And
that.
that's sort of it. That, like, there's only so many slasher movies that can be made, but you do it in a way that involves a new medium, like you said, and that makes it. That's the Blair Witch Project. It's a found footage. You know?
Another one of my favorite horror movies is because of the psychology behind the film is Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects.
It was.
And the reason I love that movie so much is because you watch the three main characters of the film who are, I mean, roving serial killers. You watch these characters do horrific things to people, and then 5 minutes later, they're shooting scenes that make them likable.
Right.
And that's what makes that movie so awesome. Excellent movie.
Henry, the
Love The
Portrait of a
Devil's
Serial
Rejects.
Killer. Did you guys see that?
No.
Which one is that? I'm sorry.
Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer?
No, I didn't see that one.
That's the same DNA. Although he's not quite as likable, but it's sobering to see someone do something so horrific and then turn around and do something that makes them human beings. Like, that's a whole other kind of horror that I mean, I guess to a certain extent that still scares me. I still haven't watched The Iceman with Michael Shannon, but I watched the documentaries and read the book, and that's pretty damn terrifying.
Michael Shannon, I think when he was born, his mother looked down and said, "One day you will play Richard Kaczynski, the Iceman." That guy, I tell you, if you want to, man, you just want a tight-lip, average guy psycho, Michael Shannon is your guy. I mean, I marked out when he was cast as General Zod in Man of Steel. I mean, beautiful.
Yeah, he's a scary dude. I'd give him my money if I bumped into him in a dark alley.
I know neither of you guys watch Boardwalk Empire, but that's where I've really become familiar with Michael Shannon. And when I saw him on that show, and it was like immediately, I was like, man, who's this guy? And when I started seeing him starting to get cast in bigger roles now, I mean, he's always this kind of like tight-lipped, 1,000-yard stare psycho, and it's just beautiful stuff.
He was the villain, the crooked cop in this movie called Premium Rush, which is essentially Quicksilver updated, and it's about a biker messenger.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's the one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yes,
in it.
and he runs afoul of this cop, and he's just like, "Listen, you got to give me the fill in the blank." I was like, if this were me, it'd be over because I totally would have given it to him. I would have been like, done, no problem. Leave me alone, dude.
Does another job and go work somewhere else.
Exactly.
Well, from a business perspective, I think horror movies, I mean, they're pretty much here to stay. I mean, when you sit there and look at what these studios pump out, I mean, the box office crowned champion from a business perspective of horror films is Lionsgate. Lionsgate has learned how to make $3 to $5 million horror movies that go on to gross anywhere from 60 million plus. And I mean, they're effective movies.
Did you see The Conjuring?
I haven't seen The
I
Conjuring.
haven't seen that
Great
either.
film. Great film.
It's on the list.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're a Lionsgate. There was a movie, man, I can't think of the name of it. It was done by Lionsgate, and this was the film that launched them as being able to have the capital to really spread their wings. It was a movie that dealt with, the stereotypical teenagers going out on a cabin trip for the weekend. Cabin fever. And they actually they run into some kind of flesh rotting disease. That movie is freaking sick.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's the scene that sticks with you? There's one scene in that movie.
I think the tub scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That traumatized me.
Creeping me out now.
That and pancakes. That's the two scenes I remember from that film. The rest of it
Exactly.
was all set up,
But that movie, you're exactly right. That opened the doors.
And another movie franchise that was wildly popular, and I mean, as all horror movies, loses its way as it goes on, was Wes Craven's Scream. And
I just read an article that they're either doing a 5.
Yeah, they're doing a 5th one.
And then also that they want to do a television series as well, non-related to the actual characters in the movie, but something that goes off in another direction, almost like
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No. Sort of like what
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
did, and they just threw out other television, that didn't.
Sorry, before I interrupted you, I was meaning to say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., another successful horror franchise.
Right, yeah.
To the horror of Marvel fans everywhere.
Eek.
I like quick detour, guys. Like, do you remember the Creep Show episode with the old man who was like a clean freak with the roaches, and did that freak you out?
For its time, because I was a little kid when that movie came out.
Exactly.
Creep Show scared the crap out of me. I mean, the whole thing. Oh, the guys when Leslie Nielsen takes the revenge on his wife that fucked around with the young guy, and he buries them up to their necks in sand, and they come back as nautical zombies.
Right.
That was man. I mean, that whole movie freaked me out. The asshole father who basically crapped all over his kids, and I want my cake. Man, it was freaky for its time.
That's right.
It was a genuinely scary movie.
The cockroaches freaked me out. I mean,
the cockroaches
we grew
one
up
was
with those
great.
things daily, so I had a hard time going to sleep without worrying that they were going to crawl in my mouth and stuff. So.
American Werewolf in London. That's another one, man. I mean, boy, scary. Movie. I mean, black comedy, but man, I mean, when the horror scenes, the transformations, the victims that he speaks to. I mean, man, that's all genuine horror.
Comedy takes your defenses down and makes you more vulnerable. That movie,
indeed.
So when they were out talking about like Heathcliff and the Moors, joking as they kept hearing that otherworldly howl, which to this day still connects with me as probably the most scary sound effect in horror movies. And then the dude slips and falls, and then he goes to help him up, and they're joking. You completely identified and connected with them. You joke with your friends about that stuff. And then he gets attacked and ripped to shreds by. Oh, it was awesome! Amazing.
Yep, great movie. Great
movie. What's coming out as far as scary movies? I just read they're doing Frankenstein.
I saw the trailer for it last night, and it looks absolutely horrible.
Okay, this is ridiculous.
This is what it spelled out for me when I saw they play the first 10 seconds of the ominous, get you excited scene in the trailer, and this is what spelled it all out for me in big red flaming font. From the producers of Underworld. When I read that, I was like, "Oh well, there it is."
Isn't the dude from Pirates also directed?
Yeah, Bill Nighy plays the villainous character, and Aaron Eckhart, who played Two-Face in The Dark Knight, plays the lead role of Frankenstein.
Here's my theory. Stick with me here. The first Alien was a horror movie, right? It was a horror movie in space,
right?
And then the second one sort of capitalized on that American exceptionalism of we are not going to effing take this anymore. And it's literally Rambo with aliens. And I feel like if you've ever seen those, and there's all kinds of Vines and YouTubes where there's a dude that doesn't realize he's about to get pranked, and then there's a scarecrow that jumps out and scares him, and the dude goes, ah! And then he hauls off and sucker punches him. I feel to a certain extent, culturally, what happens is, okay, Frankenstein, Dracula, the werewolves, these all scared us. But as we process and understand what they do, our first reaction is to go, F you, and throw a punch at them. So, like Frankenstein and Underworld, all these franchises are all based on taking something that initially scares us and educates us on a whole subculture and then turns it into an action movie. So you have this adrenaline of fight or flight, and it takes that fight and it turns it into a whole other franchise, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, I definitely agree with you on that. Universal, who are the undisputed masters of the horror film from the 1930s. I mean, all of the popular Halloween monsters: Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, the Werewolf, all of those old school Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff films. Universal actually was trying. I think that they pretty much, after Benicio del Toro did a remake of Universal's Werewolf, and I mean, it utterly flopped. I never did see the movie, but they tried to do a relaunch.
Wait, what did he do?
He did a remake of The Werewolf, Benicio del Toro. It came out a couple of years ago.
That's right. Okay.
And I mean, it flopped miserably.
As well it should have.
Yeah, I think Anthony Hopkins was in it also.
Yep.
And
it was terrible.
They tried. I mean, they had the whole rollout. They were going to do Dracula. They were going to do Frankenstein. They were going to do The Creature of the Black Lagoon. They were going to do they did the Werewolf, and after it flopped, I think they put their whole relaunch on the back burner after that. I don't think they anticipated it being a lot more well received.
It's not scary. Like, to me, scary is the stuff, the real things that could happen. Like, the Jasons, the serial killer kind of.
Yeah, those are that's your
like,
classic slasher films.
That's a little more scarier than a ghost that might be in the corner. But you know why? Because
really,
hey, dude,
so you don't believe in ghosts?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if a dude walks into the room with a knife, it's that's gonna scare me. Or if you say this room's haunted, yeah, maybe it is. Or in 5 minutes, a dude's gonna walk in with a knife and. We need to.
Well, it's like John says. The thing with it is that what it comes down to is that the audiences now are a lot more sophisticated.
Well, yeah.
The viewing audience, culture, it's a lot more sophisticated now. And I think when it comes to pulling off movies, especially the classic Ghost Story, and even if you want to do a relaunch of Universal's monsters, you need somebody who is damn good at writing psychological screenplays. That's what you need to pull off films like that, to where you can actually get into the psyche of the viewer.
Yeah, I think people are more numb to that.
They're desensitized.
Yeah.
They're desensitized to the film.
I'm just going to say this right now, and I hope this is like Kindle for Collider and Ain't It Cool to pick up on. I think Christopher Nolan should make a horror film. I think that guy would blow your mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They sort of touched on that with the first Batman movie with the Scarecrow, like the nature of fear and what it's all about. And I mean, to a certain extent, I think what scares me most now as an adult man is, are my perceptions rooted in reality, or am I fooling myself? It's all based on what you perceive as reality versus not. Which, it's sort of the last frontier in terms of what freaks me out, because
your own mind.
What?
Your own mind.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately what I think horror is based in, is what you perceive as scary, versus what is.
I go back to the things that I can't see scare me more than the things that I can see.
Exactly.
Right.
Full circle.
Well, to me, when it comes down to talking about the horror genre, I think that there's two classifications that fall within that. What I consider, there's a scary movie, and then there's a movie that induces terror. Like when I see the clown pull Robbie under the bed in Poltergeist, and my heart jumps in my throat, because that terrifies me, because I can identify with a child's toy, something that it loves, attacking it. That can actually give me psychological terror. A scary movie to me is something that's going to make me jump. And one that I love, that's a great jump movie, and it was actually recently made, was Drag Me to Hell, which is a Sam Raimi.
Yeah, I've yet to see that.
It's funny. It's got a lot of funny parts in it, but man, it has some stuff in it that will make you legitimately jump out of your skin. It's just jump scares. Really good stuff.
I saw that they're redoing Carrie. That's coming out.
I'm pretty pumped about that.
Are you?
Well, only because the gal in it was in
Kick-Ass,
and she did a great job.
Yeah.
Chloe something. it looks quite good. Like parental, like abusive parenting, which I think is like that's the whole like that's the nucleus of the whole story. So I'm actually pretty excited about it. I remember Carrie scared me somewhat when I was a kid. So
Carrie, the original Carrie with Sissy Spacek, contains probably one of the best jump scenes probably in ever filmed, and it's the visitation of the grave site.
Yes,
at the end of where the hand comes out of the grave and grabs around the throat. I mean, it's
iconic.
That one's great. Another classic one of the jump scares is when the young Jason Voorhees jumps out of the lake and grabs the girl out of the boat in the original Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's
go
ahead.
I saw Friday the 13th when I was a kid, and that was like the first serial killer movie I saw, and it freaked the hell out of me. And then I saw Halloween, and I was like, it doesn't scare me because my figurative cherry has already been busted.
Yeah, well,
But,
you
like,
became desensitized.
I actually thought Halloween was better put together. Like I thought.
The first Halloween movie, the John Carpenter first Halloween film, is phenomenal. You got to put it there as a
Donald
classic.
Pleasance profiles him so wonderfully. Like it's just hard not to be like, boy, I hope I don't bump into that guy in an alley. You know?
another movie that takes place in suburban America. And I think that's what makes a lot of the 1970s horror movies, and even into the 80s.
They were just shot differently, though.
Exactly. But they were brought more home. Instead of it being the three kids, we know there's a haunted house that's on the outskirts of town, so let's go to the haunted houses, and then, of course, horror ensues. Right, and then they bring it into your house.
All right, let's take a side quest here, because we discussed this earlier, that all of us actually saw our first horror movies on HBO or whatever when we were kids. Unbeknownst to our parents. Scott, you're a parent of a kid. If you were going to MC horror into her life, how would you do it?
Oh, I don't know. Poltergeist. I would start with the easy ones. I don't know.
Now, we talking about just kind of
the introduction of horror to my child?
Exactly.
How old? Well, what age kid are we talking? How old is your daughter, Scott?
Mine is about to be 8.
8 years old. I would start with Beetlejuice. That's what I would start with.
I don't know that I would. I'm going to go on record and saying I'm not going to start. I'm going to let her, because I know what I did to my parents, keeping them up like you were talking about.
Look,
I want to sleep.
I enjoy the fact that I sleep in my bed and my child sleeps in their bed.
Yeah, man.
I enjoy that. I
wants
enjoy
to sneak
that.
them. Let her sneak them. Figure it out. I had to stumble through the horror thing. Let her figure it out.
So you're just going to let her discover on her own?
When my mom and dad found out that I watched Poltergeist, my mother was pissed.
Did your dad laugh his ass off?
No, he didn't laugh at all. He was pissed, too. He was very pissed because they knew what it was. They knew that I was going to be tugging on their shirt at 3 o'clock in the morning, Mommy, I can't sleep. And it's aggravating shit.
I will say the first traumatizing thing I ever saw as a kid, it was The Omen, and it was just the scene where the glass truck wrecked and decapitated someone important. And I was like, I didn't realize that could happen. The laws of physics came crashing through my world.
For me,
it was David Warner, that gets decapitated.
It's the hanging scene in The Omen that makes me crazy.
Oh, the maid or whatever?
That hanging scene is it creeps me out.
I mean, she made her own decision there. Like the notion of someone's head coming clean off as a result of something you had no control over flipped me out. Chris, what about you?
I'd say when it comes to that, the one that and it's The Natural, because the movie's so iconic and it's so great. It's The Exorcist.
Oh yeah,
The Exorcist. It's another deal. Here's a child that a child that is actually is the only child of a successful parent, and is actually possessed by the devil, and. The stuff that they had this child saying and the actual voice of the devil. It's amazing. The scariest scene that freaks me out in The Exorcist is when you see the true devil's face.
Yeah.
And it's put in for 2 seconds.
A dream sequence.
And all it is the white makeup. The white makeup with the sunken-in eyes and the fangs, and it's very effective and very terrifying.
And I will tell you right now, when I was a kid, I remember walking in on that and watching it.
Yeah, I did too.
And I fell asleep, like I couldn't sleep. And my mom would come in. My mom came in. I will never forget this. And she said, "It's just a movie." And I said, "Yeah, but I understand that. The whole notion is that the devil can possess you at any point. And if the devil can possess you at any point, then what can you do to save me? What can anyone do to protect
Call a
me?
young priest and an old
she
priest.
freaked out. Like my mom apparently had trouble sleeping after I essentially explained to her the root of my fear, and she could not address it.
Yeah, right. How the hell do I fix that?
Right. How do I run away from the devil? You know what I mean?
How do I keep this little son of a bitch out of my bed?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, garlic
Exactly.
and all the stuff that works against Frankenstein and Dracula isn't going to do the job, man. I don't know what to do.
Right, exactly. The devil chuckles at silver bullets.
Exactly. The devil eats silver bullets for breakfast.
Yeah, that was our go-to movie when I was at LSU. We would come home and put on The Exorcist, but only the second half of The Exorcist, not the first.
Oh,
half.
yeah,
We
yeah,
would
all the good shit.
all the good stuff, and we would watch that and eat Taco Bell and then go to sleep. You know. But I had saw real fast. I had saw screen takes. It was Linda Blair and her stunt double. And they just had them in full makeup against a white screen, and all they did was have them spin slowly so that they could look at, how they were lit and everything like that. And just that was creepy enough. That creeped
Oh,
me
yeah.
out, just seeing that and with no, music or anything like that. But
Here's a piece of meaningless trivia. Do you know who was the original consideration to play Reagan in The Exorcist?
No.
Dana Plato of Different Strokes.
really,
Wow.
She actually passed on the role.
huh?
Passed on the role.
Different
That would
strokes for
make
different
sense.
folks.
I mean, how do you direct someone who's 12 or 13 years old to deliver some of the things the devil says? Like,
Yep.
I can't even repeat it on a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how William Friedkin was able to say, okay, you deliver these lines, action.
All right, well, I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Please join us for the next episode of Popcorn, Piss, and Vinegar, where we will continue the talk about Halloween. By that time, I'm sure we have watched the episodes of the fourth season of The Walking Dead and
Yeah.
also American Horror Story Coven. I'm
Can't
sure
wait.
we'll talk about those things in depth. You can join us after the show on Twitter at hashtag PPVGuyTalk and jump into our conversation and listen to this episode and previous episodes by visiting www.popcornpissandvinegar.com. See y'all next time. Thank you.
And scene.